Alright, so welcome to interview one. The whole purpose of this entire series titled Authentic Interviews is the main objective is when you watch CNN, ABC, any of the alphabet news outlets, you notice that they have the wrong people on there, and they're specifically talking about the issues that do nothing except contribute to the slavery system we're within. Oh, you think, talking about gun control or Donald Trump or any of these specific issues is going to solve anything, and on top of that, the interviews are only 5 to 10 minutes, when in reality, if you want to talk about a subject, it takes a lifetime to learn, not just 5 minutes watching something on the morning or daily show. So my first guest, Mark Passio, in case you guys don't know him, he is a very good researcher when it comes to the occult, natural law, and any issues facing humanity as a whole, pretty much. And we were originally going to talk about neo-feminism and how it's pretty much dividing the sexes within this country and pretty much the whole entire world, but unfortunately Obama in the recent past couple of days is deciding to pass 23 executive orders that is going to limit our rights to bear arms within this country. And we're also going to get a little bit into the Oregon standoff. And if we have an opportunity to, we'll definitely touch on the neo-feminist agenda, but if that's not, we won't. So I'm going to give the floor to Mark because I know he really wants to talk about this right now.
Well, Alex, thanks so much for having me on your program today.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the events of today have been pretty distressing, I think, and anybody who really is paying attention to what's going on in America will be rightly concerned, because what is being done here is that the executive branch of the government is trying to play God and essentially, create law at their whim. Absolutely no oversight from Congress. This guy thinks he could just do whatever he wants, and at the stroke of a pen, make things be the way he wants them to be.
Infringing on the Constitution. Yeah.
So, not that I'm a believer in any of man's laws. Natural law is the only law that really exists. Moral law, the knowledge of the difference between right and wrong. But this is a particularly bad sign that the executive branch is trying to completely overstep its boundaries with signing statements or executive orders. And what he's trying to do is erode the Second Amendment. He is trying to wage a war of incrementalism, which is to infringe and take away this right very slowly, piecemeal, a little at a time, in doing it in ways that people would say, oh, that makes sense, or that's reasonable. Yeah. That's the way that tyrants always do things. They try to take advantage of some kind of a distressing situation that the public sees as something needing desperately to be done about, and they play on those irrational fears from the public and pose themselves as the solution to those problems. And always the solution is less freedoms for the people and more control for the government. So what he's trying to do is make it more difficult for the average person to be able to purchase firearms by essentially proposing more stringent background checks that already exist. And ultimately what he wants to do is take away the ability for a private individual to be able to sell a gun to any other private individual, which in most states is still legal for people to do as far as long arms are concerned, rifles, etc. So, I think that would significantly limit the power of the people to have firearms in their possession and organize amongst themselves into militias. And long term, what it is really just doing is setting up anybody that doesn't want to have the government involved in the sale and transfer of firearms, which has traditionally been done in this country since its existence, as being criminal.
Yep. Amongst private citizens, right. They just pretty much want to label you. That's why they're trying to attempt to only strictly have you purchase at gun shops, pretty much, because they want that record on you. So when the time comes, they can take the weapons from everyone, pretty much.
You know, and this goes all to this situation. This relates directly to the situation going on in Oregon at the Mahler Wildlife Refuge, you know, being taken by this Patriot militia group. And people come down on both sides of this and will say, some will say they support their action, some will say it's not the right action or the right time. You know, I mean, I come down on this side of the issue. The bottom line is, tyranny has been taking place, is taking place now, is continuing to take place. At some point, people are going to have to just say the magic word, the lost word, no. This far and no further. We're not going to continue to take it. We're not going to continue to let our rights be eroded. And, you know, at what point is the time?
That's exactly what I was just going to ask you, Mark. I was just thinking within my head, where is it going to take us? What point is it going to take us where people are going to realize that they're just slowly starting to take our rights away? It's been happening since the beginning of this country.
I mean, when you're being put on a train or in a truck, you know, it's too late then.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, and you'll see people insist, oh, there's never a time for a forceful revolution. There's never a time for a revolution with guns. Because, first of all, there's two parts to this. One is, yes, people want to try to resolve this peacefully. And so do I. And, you know, I, until really very recently, thought it would be resolved peacefully. I less and less as the days go by believe that there's going to be a peaceful resolution to the entire problem of government tyranny. And I'm just going to pretty much come out and say that from now on. Like, I don't think this is going to be ended using words or teaching or, you know, explaining to people the difference between right and wrong, because they don't care. They do not care.
Yeah.
They're not interested in what's right. They're not interested in what's true. They're not interested in what leads to greater freedom. People want slavery. They want slavery to exist. They love it. They can't get enough of it. And people like that are dangerous individuals, as far as I'm concerned. They are condoners of violence. You know, they are condoners of the continuation of this immoral slavery system. And, you know, they're not going to take no for an answer. You know, they're not going to respect someone's right to live free, unhindered by having someone else's will put upon them through coercion, even if they're not hurting anybody else. They're not interested in what someone's rights are. You know, they want their will imposed through violence, and they'll stop at nothing to get that done. And that's what these federal agents like the BLM have been doing since their existence. And you know, one of the things Obama announced today is he wants to dramatically increase the ATF, as if it's not already a big enough, you know, bureaucracy and a big enough
against drugs, pretty much.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a big enough mechanism of tyranny already.
Yeah.
You know, daring to tell people what, you know, kinds of substances they can put into their body, or, you know, what kind of firearms they can possess. You know, this is what infringement is all about. This is what the erosion of rights is all about. They'll keep taking it slowly, piecemeal, until people find themselves in a concentration camp. And people say that's alarmist thinking. No, it isn't alarmist. You know, all you have to do is even conduct a cursory study of even recent history, let alone a long view of history, to understand that this is not only has been done, but it's a repeated historical pattern. And all the warning signs are written all over the wall. For people not to be able to see that this is going on here, they're not paying attention at this point. So my take on the whole standoff in Oregon is, you know, if not now, when are you going to say no? You know, people just ultimately are cowards. You know, I just look at it like this, Alex. There are people who would never fight for anything, no matter how ravaged their rights became. And to me, that's not even a human being. And people will say, oh, Mark, you're trying to dehumanize people. You know, you're trying to say, oh, that makes you less human. Well, it does. If you don't have the ability to get angry at something as fundamentally important as your rights being destroyed, there's something not human about that. There's something fundamentally broken in the psychology that makes you less than a human being, as far as I am concerned. And I see this disturbing trend in society of, especially in men who cannot get angry, who the emotion of anger is actually absent from
They're
their
physically
entire,
incapable, yeah.
physically, chemically
Yep.
incapable of expressing the emotion of righteous anger. Now, if that's not the engineering of a new kind of being, I don't know what is. And that's a very, very, very disturbing thing. And I'm telling you, I have seen people like that who cannot feel within their own heart, mind, and spirit, to the extent when injustice is right there in front of their face, they cannot feel to an extent to actually be able to express the physiological emotion of anger within the body.
And when we were doing research prior to this, we came across a term, I forget exactly what it stands for, ODD. I thought it was a joke originally. What's the exact definition of that term?
Oppositional defiant disorder. This is another thing that some of these executive orders kind of make it easy for, if someone is diagnosed with something like that, like, in other words, you don't think that there should be such a thing as authority or government, then you could have your guns seized if you are diagnosed by some healthcare professional as having ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, like this ridiculous, claim of a disease. If you think that no one is your master, no one is your authority, I mean, imagine this. If I think I'm a free sovereign being that isn't a slave to some external authority, I have some kind of a disease. I mean, this is how crazy this society has become. I mean, this is lunacy. It's a bad nightmare. It's a bad joke. It's a bad cartoon that's running, literally. It's a mind virus that people are actually playing out and running like some bad cartoon, like some bad program.
And I don't know what it's like in your generation, Mark, but unfortunately in my generation, I'm still going to university, unfortunately, and it's just pretty much kids, the basic idea of people around 21, 20, 19, the basic, idea I get of people around my age, they're only interested in, just, living up to these so-called societal expectations, not rocking the boat in any way, shape, or form. Out of my entire life, I've probably only met 2 or 3 people, and this is just me being incredibly generous, what you would call so-called semi-conscious, semi-awake people. And when you gave them this information, they were too scared to do absolutely anything with it in any way, shape, or form, because they were too afraid to rock the boat in any way, shape, or form.
That's what's out there in a huge way today, is enormous fear. I mean, people just have no courage at all to speak their mind, to say anything that goes against this immoral system of control and slavery in any way. And they would actually look you dead in the eyes and say, I'm a moral human being, when they're standing by and doing nothing when people's rights are being taken away. They don't care. See, part of it is people think that this government is invincible or something. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about human beings here. I don't care what kind
sick
of technology.
Sick human beings on top of
Absolutely sick people, secondary psychopaths, the vast majority of them, and some primary psychopaths, which you might make the argument are not actually human beings. But, they're mortal, okay? Let's just put it that way. These are mortal entities. They're not some supernatural gods. Their technology doesn't make them supernatural or immortal, There is no sure thing. I mean, and people think that somehow they're invincible. Let me tell you something. Our founders fought against even greater odds, and arguably what could be considered more well-trained soldiers in their day. And they came out on top. And here's another thing I keep seeing over and over again. People wanting to trash the American Revolution, wanting to trash the founders of this nation. This is all cultural Marxist garbage, okay, that is put here by communists to try to discredit the roots of how this country was formed and how it became the most prosperous place to live on this planet for well over 100 years, okay? the American Revolution was legitimate, ladies and gentlemen. I'll go on record as saying that. We kicked the British's ass, okay? Handed them their ass. And they had egg all over their face, and the king couldn't stand it, and they vowed revenge. They vowed covert revenge against this country.
And they've succeeded pretty much.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. You know? And people have let them do it because we got too comfortable. We weren't vigilant about our rights and our freedoms, you know, and the prosperity made us soft that we enjoyed for so long.
And now that we're on the subject of these people who claim to be moral human beings, you know, they can sit back on a chair from afar, metaphorically speaking, call you out on these things. I don't like you doing this. I don't like you doing that. I don't like you doing this. And you know, ever since I told people that I know you, that I interact with you, they always ask me, like, oh, Mark, he's a disinfo agent. He might be a misinfo agent because he supports these specific individuals such as Alex Jones, David Icke, you know, Jordan Maxwell, who have a shady past in some way, shape, or form. When in reality, what I just want to fucking say is, where's your work? Right. What are you doing? If you don't like it, how about you do something yourself?
Yeah, in their minds, the guilt by association fallacy. They have a problem with some researcher that I said I enjoy part or a lot of their work, and therefore that makes me in their mind some kind of a disinfo agent because they don't accept the legitimacy of the research of whatever researcher I quoted or mentioned or happened to support. You know, that's you know, absolutely a ridiculous logical fallacy. You know, if you don't like a particular researcher, that has nothing to do with me. If I say I accept, you know, the validity of their work or think it's true or think it, you know, should be paid attention to, that's my opinion. Do your own work. Do your own research. Most of all, put your own information out there. Yeah. You know, again, that's all they're doing is they're keyboard commandos, they're armchair quarterbacks, and ultimately what these people are cowards. They're cowards. They don't want to go on record with their name saying something real, you know, because they don't want their name out there. You know, they want to point fingers at other people telling them how they're doing it wrong. So my answer to that is, I don't care what you think of me. Never did. Never will. Doesn't matter to me. I couldn't give a shit. At all. At all. Okay? I'm doing the work that I feel needs to be done. I'm putting the information that I feel people need to understand out there. And therefore, my conscience is clear, ladies and gentlemen. I'm doing the great work. I'm doing what I can do. And that's more than I could say for a whole lot of lazy-ass people out there, okay, who are doing absolutely nothing. Mm-hmm. You know, like I said, you want to know the measure of what a person is doing regarding the great work as far as the great work is concerned? Wrap their full name in double quotes in any search engine you prefer, and you'll find out what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Go do that with my name. Put Mark Passio in double quotes in whatever search engine you like, and you'll see the testimony of my life and work, as you will with any other researcher out there who's actually worth his salt and is doing his work. Mm-hmm. You know, but these people who are critics put their name in double quotes in any search engine you prefer.
Results.
Yeah, you know what it is? Coward keyboard commandos. That's what you got. That's exactly what you got. So that's all I really have to say about morons like that.
And this is an incredibly old subject. People are too lazy to do the research, such as, you know, typing the words such as what Mark Passio thinks of, you know, people calling him Schiller, because this is a well-documented topic on YouTube that you've gone over, of you going out of your way and telling people you're not a shill. And I know Mark personally in his real life too, and I go to his house on occasion. We're friends. I don't see any revolving doors, like, oh, I don't see a trip switch under the, you know, desk that turns everything into this secret operation.
Through these double doors, the ritual will be taking place later, Alex.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, so now that we're, you know, we're at a crossroads with this interview, we can keep talking about these 23 executive orders, or we could, you know, go into the neo-feminist agenda as well, the division of the sexes.
I mean, I'd really like to talk about how people are just so uncomfortable with the idea of a physical revolution.
Okay.
You know, because it shows you how effeminized and emasculated and cowardly the American male has become. Yep. All they're worried about is, you know, who's going to win the game on Monday night, you know? Who's going to get into the playoffs in football, you know? How much money am I making at my job? Does this woman or girl like me? You know, when I'm going to get the next video game for Xbox, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is what the American male is concerned with, while their rights are being taken from them on a daily basis, and they would call themselves a man. This is what they're concerned with. You know, I'm not denying like as a hobby. You know, you need that in your life, you know, to reduce stress and you know, have a balanced life. But I mean, to make that your part, you know, your identity, or to make that the thing you do most of the time. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's escapism, hedonism, whatever.
Because
You know,
I think
they just don't care about anything that's real. They're afraid to get involved in anything that's real because they're afraid, what will people think of me? Oh, will they label me this or that, conspiracy theorist, right-wing nut, whatever.
Yep.
You know?
And you pretty much took words right out of my mouth on that. It's just people are too afraid of the work. And I believe the subconscious mind has a very powerful influence on people. I think it's what's driving the majority of people. And I honestly think subconsciously, people know the slave system we're under. I think subconsciously, people know that we're in trouble. But they don't want to do anything about it in any way, shape, or form.
Because they realize it's probably going to get dangerous from this point forward. You know, these people are making strides to try to label people who talk out against their immoral system as terrorists. Well, hey, you know what? If what I'm saying regarding the immorality of a system that is based in coercion and violence makes me a terrorist in someone else's eyes, then I'll wear that label as a badge of honor. Okay? You could call me whatever you want. I stand for truth and morality. And if something is coercion, if something is based in violence, if something is based in slavery, it's immoral, and I want no part to do with it. I want nothing to do with it. You know, so speaking out against that, hey, if someone wants to label me a terrorist, you go right ahead. Okay, I'll accept the label if that's what you want to call me. Okay, but what I know that I am is someone who is doing the right thing, and that's all that matters.
Exactly. That's the main point right there. And also, a second reason from preventing most people from doing quote-unquote the great work is just that they don't want to go against the tide. They don't want to, you know, go against, you know, oh, what will my friends think of me? Oh, what will my friends, you know, think of me?
That's the biggest fear of them all. You know, what will somebody else think of me? You know,
even though it's a wrongdoing, that's the thing. People are still willing to
stand by and be silent with all this violence and coercion going on. You know, the total count in 2015 alone, in 1 year, of people murdered by American police without trial, murdered, assassinated, executed by police in America, in the United States alone, in 1 year, was 1,200 people. 1,200 individuals murdered by police in 1 year in this country. And you don't think we're already in the middle of a civil war? I mean, you have to have your head up your ass if that's what you think, that we're not already in the middle of war. War is already on, ladies and gentlemen. War is already being waged on the American population.
It's like ignoring the elephant in the room. That's pretty much just honking loogies on you, just smacking you around with its trunk, so to speak. Like, it's getting to the point where, metaphorically speaking, people are just in a corner physically, and yet they're still relying on their little worldly pleasures, all these little things. Oh, I'm just going to keep, you know, working, you know, my 9-to-5 job. I'll just pretend stay in la la land, so to speak.
They'll make justifications for these immoral behaviors. Oh, they had some kind of a right to do that. They had some kind of an excuse to do that. You know, if you did something like that, you'd be thrown in a cage immediately. You know, if you were held to, if police were held to the same standards as the average person, you know, they'd be thrown in a cage immediately.
Oh, yeah.
For their behavior.
Yes.
But no, they're above everything else, you know. They're like God men walking around. You know, they have special rights and privileges that we don't.
And I'll put in the description box, folks, but they're coming out with evidence. This has been a long time fact that, especially in the UK and in the US now, that police officers, the military, and specific parts of law enforcement, they specifically go out of their way to look with people who have narcissistic and psychopathic traits.
And low IQs, not to mention.
Exactly.
You know, they want dumb psychopathic people in their ranks. They already have them. You know, they've had them for many, many years, for many decades. You know, people still don't understand the radical influence of cultural Marxism in this country is so out of control. You know, I mean, you just look at all the leftists, the so-called liberals. I mean, it's a tragedy that the word liberal is even being applied to people who think like this. They're nothing of the kind. They're neoliberals. You know, they're fake liberals. Certainly not classical liberals. And they're calling for the deaths of these militia members who are, you know, who have taken this wildlife refuge in Oregon. You know, again, summary execution without trial. You know, and yet these people wouldn't call themselves fascists. You know, when they behave just like fascists.
And it's funny because people view the government in a very godly and worldly type of way, when in reality, they're just like the Philadelphia Mafia, the 5 families of New York City. And the main reason, it's a mafia. The reason why those families got, you know, pretty much took off the scene is because they were stealing the dough, the scene from the main government. And if they want to work for them, they could.
They incorporated them into the government. That's what happened, folks. Organized crime got all incorporated into government. They joined hands behind the scenes. They absorbed them. They absorbed the smaller gang into the bigger gang. That's what happened. Wake up if you don't understand that, folks, because if you don't understand the influence of organized crime in government and vice versa, you're not paying attention to what's going on in this country, or throughout the world for that matter.
No way, shape, or form. And we could keep going on with the subject, or you want to talk about neo-feminists, because I remember you talked about this one specific female that you knew in Satanism, and you didn't necessarily go into detail. You just said you knew a female Satanist, but did they happen to practice any of the type of feminist traits that you see within society today?
Without any question, without a doubt, all of them. All of these techniques were practiced by Satanists who I knew, female Satanists who I knew.
And people just think it's strictly men. That's the thing. They think it's just a bunch of, you know, evil, sinister men, when it's not that. There's many females involved in Satanism as well.
I would say modern neo-feminism came out of Satanism. It came out of dark occultic belief systems. And this is something I'm going to touch on at Free Your Mind 4. At the Free Your Mind 4 conference, my presentation is actually entitled The Unholy Feminine, Neo-Feminism and the Satanic Epi-Eugenics Agenda. That's the full title. The short title, the main title, is simply The Unholy Feminine. And I'm going to be getting into, you know, how the female mind has been specifically targeted for attack by social engineering, mind control, cultural Marxism. These influences are pervasive in females in our entire society. And not that satanic values, if you want to call them that, satanic ideologies are not prevalent in both sexes, but they are absolutely propagated through the females in society, because since females in a society ultimately make the determination as to who breeds and passes down their genes to the next generation, the social engineers naturally have to target them in a special way, specifically. And I'm going to talk about the techniques that they use to do that, and the attitudes that they instill, and how they're fomenting this dialectical war between the sexes, and how in a Hegelian dialectic, only one side needs to be influenced for that dialectic to ultimately be successful. Because, you know, I liken it to the dialectic that took place in World War II. People will say, oh, it was a manipulated war. Well, yeah, of course, all wars are manipulated wars. All wars are banker wars, essentially. You know, the elite wants to divide and conquer the people, and they want them fighting amongst each other. But you know what? If they whip up one side or a group of people, and they say, here, this is your enemy, and go and wage war on them, like the police are waging war against the American people right now, you know, like they did in World War II, and they got the Germans, the Nazi party, to wage war against Europe, and then ultimately, you know, we're going to turn that aggression on the rest of the world. What's the rest of the world to do? Say, wow, we recognize how this is a complete machination, how it's all, you know, one big Hegelian dialectical psyop, so, oh, let's do nothing about it. You know, let's stand down, let's let them walk all over us and take everything and take the world. Right? That's what we were supposed to do, right? Because we know it was a manipulated effort. Just like Oh yeah, we're supposed to say now, oh, we know the cops are all being brainwashed and manipulated. We know it's a dialectic taking place to try to turn them against the people and the military against the people. So we're supposed to say, oh, sorry guys, we know you're brainwashed. We gotta lay down and let you take all of our rights and take us all to FEMA camps.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the answer in some people's minds, because it's manipulated. Well, what's the difference whether these people are manipulated or not? Their actions are what matters. The result of their actions are what I'm concerned with. It doesn't make a difference why they did what they did, whether they took it of their own volitional free will or they were completely influenced or completely brainwashed into taking that action. All that ultimately matters is, here's what's happening in the world, folks. What are you going to do about it? That's what ultimately matters.
And we briefly touched on it in the beginning of the interview, such as just the emasculation of the male within this society and just the gender reversals, so to speak. And, you know, I like studying feminism from time to time just because out of curiosity. And I decided to go on YouTube the other day, just type in feminists, just get an overall idea of what they actually think. And there's feminists that actually go out there and they pretty much, you know, just use men for resources in every way, shape, or form. And it's just a result from just daddy issues and just state issues that they have.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, certainly.
I mean, this is a huge dynamic that's taken place within society, especially Western society, especially American society. And this is satanic ideology.
And do you care to touch on just the emasculation of men overall? And just
You just walked through my neighborhood with me, right?
Yes.
We went to the store
Yes,
earlier.
exactly.
Is this society emasculated?
Yes, in every way.
Is this city a bunch of little boys who have never grown up, who you could not legitimately call men?
Yep, without a doubt.
I mean, there it is right there, folks, from another person in the city of Philadelphia who's just seeing what it's like just walking around an average neighborhood that used to be, within my lifetime, filled with what I would consider legitimate men, some tough men, as a matter of fact. And now, I mean, it is hipster haven central. The new man is created, ladies and gentlemen. The pastel colors, no bass in the voice.
Yep.
You know, couldn't pick up a bowling ball. You know, they're so lanky and just waifs. Practical waifs. I mean, there's like no muscle tone. There's no they're just wishy-washy, soft milk toast people.
And unfortunately, growing up in the main line, the suburbs of Philadelphia, this is all I was pretty much exposed to. And you know, we were discussing how there was somewhat of a movement of, you know, it was proud, like it was a good thing to be a man back in the day. But now.
Yep. It's
just when I go to my school, it's just like, oh, don't get angry.
Yep.
You're a negative and toxic person.
They're engineered people. This is the new man in the dark occult world. See, there's a new evolved human, which is the true new being, the new man, as it's called in the occult. Then the dark occult has their equivalent of this that's called the new man in there. Just like there's two great works. There's the true one great work of truth, love, and freedom. Higher consciousness, okay, enacted in the world, which is what the real great work is. But then the dark occultists have their version of the great work, which is total enslavement. Well, then there's two new man concepts as well. You know, in the positive side, the new man is the enlightened being, you know, who has undergone a spiritual renaissance. And again, it has nothing to do with gender. It's the enlightened being. It's men and women. And then there's the new man in the dark occult sense of the term. And that's what we're seeing out in the streets of America today and throughout the world. Totally emasculated, fake, just wishy-washy, milquetoast people who won't stand up for their rights. Strong men are who are going to battle against tyrants and their henchmen. They don't want strong men in society because they don't want people to have the ability to fight back against these tyrants and their henchmen.
And this quote-unquote new man, it's even worse in less developed countries. When I was in South America this summer, I did not once see any man get angry in any way, shape, or form. There were bullies going up to, you know, people doing their 9-to-5 jobs there, and they physically did not display any anger within any way, shape, or form, because within that culture, It's bad to become angry.
Being actually engaged with physical violence done to them, you're saying they still didn't get angry?
Yeah, the guy literally pushed him and they just ran the opposite way. One of the customs within one of the countries I was in South America, they don't display any anger in any way, shape, or form.
It's that bad. It's that bad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you don't understand that this is dark, occult, social engineering, you're not paying attention, ladies and gentlemen. You have to understand this is the think tank's influence, and they're waging it through the schools, they're waging it through the media, they're waging it through toxic chemicals in the environment that are destroying the male reproductive system, that are destroying the chemical and emotional makeup of male beings in our society to basically turn them into a neutral being.
Do you mind commenting?
To feminize them.
You mind commenting on what they're doing to testosterone now and pretty much the estrogen-based foods?
I'm going to get into this in a big way in the Free Your Mind 4 presentation, but essentially there's a war against testosterone in our society, and not just in the male of our species, in the female. And I'm going to actually save that for the Free Your Mind conference, because I want to try to express to people why specifically testosterone is being targeted to be lowered in females of our society. And I think people will find that very interesting if they come to the conference to hear that lecture.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. Are there any other topics you would like to touch on before we end this interview?
Yeah, preparedness.
Okay,
this is something that I think I'm going to be covering more on my personal information in the future, because I think it's so important to start getting ready physically for what we are going to face as a country, and really as people who care about freedom in the world in general. Folks, the time is short, okay? And you better start really taking what's going on seriously, and you better start getting ready, physically prepared. And that means get your weapons ready, get your ammunition ready, get your survival gear ready, get a bug-out bag prepared, get gas masks, get storable food and water, and be ready to be mobile as well. Because, you know, when things do go south, you may not be able to stay in one place and shelter in place or stay where you're at very long. If you're not taking it seriously, that this is going to be as much of a physical battle as it's going to be a spiritual battle, okay? You're not paying attention to what's going on around you. And you better stop making jokes about the whole thing. You know, I see a lot of people thinking this is a big joke. You're going to find out how much of a joke it is when a sniper bullet goes past your ear. Then you're not going to be laughing so hard, you know? That's what it's going to take for some people to wake up. You're going to find out how much of a joke it is when police show up in armored vehicles outside your home to put you in a van and take you to a camp. Then you're not going to be laughing. Then you're going to be looking at people that tried to tell you to get ready, and you're going to be crapping in your pants.
Yeah.
You know, and saying, I wish I would have listened to those people. And I'm not trying to be an alarmist. I'm being very practical and real world oriented, because these are murderers. These are murderers, these are psychopaths, these are criminals, these are pedophiles.
Yep.
They're Satanists, they're dark occultists, and they're sick, sick, sick people infected with the control disease. They're infected with the disease of authority and the desire to control other beings and put them under their will. And it's not going to end well, because people refuse to hear the voice of reason and truth. And they're making jokes and mocking it and saying that, you know, oh, these people are somehow invincible, or somehow they have a right to do what they're doing, or are justified. It's endless justifications. It's endless excuses for sitting on their ass, doing nothing. It's endless justifications for their own sissy boy cowardice. Okay? And it's going to be the death of these people. They don't understand. It's like they're pulling and pulling and pulling on a rope, bringing an entire structure down right upon their head, bringing a building down right on top of them by their own effort. And they're joking about it the whole time, laughing about it the whole time. Folks, there's coming a time. I'm just putting it right out there plainly for all to hear. There's coming a time you're not going to be laughing or joking about it. And it's going to be deadly, deadly serious. I'm telling people right now, you better get your head screwed on straight, get it out from up your ass. Recognize what's taking place all around you in this country and recognize how serious this situation is and start getting prepared.
And you know what? It's just history repeating itself once more. If you look at false flag events such as Pearl Harbor or September 11th, we thought we were on top of the world. Oh, that would never happen within this country in any way, shape, or form. But it takes a tragedy in order for people to find out.
I talk about this at the so-called greatest generation. I mean, what a laughing joke. And hey, don't get me wrong. I just practically defended that generation, saying they needed to do what they did. But you know what they did afterward? They said, oh, it's all taken care of. You know, we did what we had to do. We won. You know, let's go back and enjoy the prosperity of America because we're all safe now. Meanwhile, communists were flooding the country. Nazis were flooding the country, and they were Americans let their guard down. They got selfish. They accepted satanic values into their lives. That's what happened. Okay? And tons and tons and tons of communists and Nazis shook hands behind the scenes and said, you know what? They may have just practically handed us our asses, but you know what we're going to do? We're going to go in their country and we're going to take it by stealth. You know? The Nazis never lost World War II. They went underground. They waged an ideological war in the school systems, in the courts, in the government itself, in the media. Not a communist came here. They went underground. They did the same thing and infiltrated all the same institutions, especially the educational system and media. And now we are running this country according to communist and Nazi and satanic values, and people are still largely asleep to it.
And we unfortunately, it's the worst in my generation right now. The absolute worst, especially when it comes to, whenever you hear those specific trigger words, self-defense, stalking, buying a weapon, they automatically think you're an absolute psychotic maniac. And I can just see the comment section right now, which I approve comments, by the way, and I don't even, show the dislike button, and I'm going to be called a shill for that, but it's my own virtual property. I can do with what I please with it. And it's just people, when they hear those trigger words, oh, standing up for yourself, that's negative. That's negative energy. Yeah. That's bad to stand up for yourself. We're not talking about violence.
These people have been bred to hate themselves.
Yep.
They've been bred never to care about anything enough to fight for it. Mm-hmm. That's the definition of a broken being. That's what a broken individual is. That's what somebody who actually does have psychological problems and issues is like. Not people who care about themselves enough to make preparations that they themselves and their loved ones are going to be okay and be defended and be provided for. Mm-hmm. You know, that means you actually care about yourself, your rights, your life, and others who also hold those values dear.
And to so-called religious people and these fake-ass New Agers, even the idols you worshipped, if you actually take the time to study their history, I'm not going to debate the fact whether Jesus Christ was a historical figure or not. It's not the point. It's besides the point. If you take the symbolic...
The allegory is the point.
Exactly. If you take the symbolic teachings of the Bible and read what Jesus saw to self-defense, he believed in self-defense.
Yep. In the book of Matthew, he says, if you do not have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. And it's not allegorical. No. It's not some spiritual allegory. He was talking about the Romans conquering the world, essentially setting themselves up as God, okay, and saying it is so important that you have the ability to defend yourself against this evil that if you don't have the money to buy a sword right now, sell your goddamn clothes if you have to. Sell your computers. Sell your furniture. Sell your refrigerator. Sell your appliances in your house. If you have to be able to have the means of defending yourself, your life, and your rights. You know what? I don't know how to say it any plainer, folks. If you haven't already done that, you're mentally ill. How about that? Can I say it any stronger of a way?
That is as blunt as you can possibly make it, Mark. And, people, I want to ask you this question before I ask it. I know people are going to be like, oh, Mark Passio is racist because he believes this. But who are the most spiritual people you think walk the earth? I already know the answer to it, but you're going to get a lot of shit to it. And I want you to explain the reason on why you think this and to defend the reason on why Not all of them were slave owners.
You know the answer is the Founding Fathers of America. Yeah. In all of my studies, these were the most spiritually enlightened people who have walked on the earth. Not some guru sitting in a mountain in India somewhere, or in the Himalayas somewhere in Nepal. Okay, not people in the Far East who have accepted the absolute tyrannical rule over there for countless thousands of years.
Thailand still has a king where Buddhism basically started.
Alex, here's why cultural Marxist trash scum have to attack the origins of America. This is the only place where people physically fought against the tyrannical ruling class of the earth.
When it wasn't able to be accomplished spiritually, that's the thing. When
It's the only place they did it, because they were Renaissance men.
Yep.
They were men who were more spiritually enlightened than anybody else that had ever lived in this whole region of the world, let alone in Europe. Mm-hmm. And people want to attack them constantly and say they were somehow trying to set this country up for slavery. No. The only reason this country existed in the state of the modicum of freedom that it existed in for well over, the early part of the beginnings of this country up until around the Civil War is because what the American founding fathers and revolutionaries did and the ideas that they put forward here. And again, not all of them were slave owners, as you said. This is another misnomer. This is another cultural Marxist tactic, to get people to try to, look at the founders as some kind of a negative influence in our society. I tried to talk to somebody, out in a pub one time about the founders, and they said, I think the founding fathers were evil, that somehow. And I said, what makes you think that? Well, some of them owned slaves. Yeah, the ones in the South, and they weren't the founding fathers.
No, they weren't. Nope.
They were representatives of the Continental Congress that happened to be from the southern states. They're not considered the founders of America. They always target Thomas Jefferson in this effort. Jefferson was a member of the South, of the southern states. He was a delegate from Virginia. And yeah, he did own a plantation and have slaves. And he made a verbal agreement before leaving for the Second Continental Congress to release those slaves, and he kept his agreement after that Continental Congress. Mm-hmm. So he was ideologically opposed to the practice, even though it was part of his culture in the state where he resided. And people need to understand that. And he put tons of anti-slavery, anti-black slavery clauses in the Declaration of Independence, and representatives from the southern states refused to sign the Declaration of Independence, refused to pass it through committee, and we're going to strike it down. And there wouldn't be any vote for independence if he didn't remove the anti-black slavery clauses that he originally had in the original draft of the Declaration of Independence.
And it's funny, people, when you speak the truth, they will find everything about you in the world to call you out on, because they know that you're right, and they want to find one little thing that you're wrong. Oh, you like some of Alex Jones' works. Zionist shill you are.
Oh, well, I'm clearly an agent because I've supported InfoWars by buying some of the products on their store. Yeah. Oh, God forbid. I mean, not one thing I could have possibly ever said since I've started doing this work could possibly be true.
Yeah.
And
what is your...
Because you happen not to like that guy or whoever.
Exactly.
Because I've in the beginning of a presentation given some credit to Michael Tessarion or Jordan Maxwell or David Icke or William Cooper or whoever. Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't like one of those guys, it nullifies everything I've ever said.
Yep.
That's perfect logic, don't you know?
And what is...
Perfectly logical.
What is your defense in, some of the founding fathers being Freemasons and things of that nature? Because people are going to, say, oh, they were, members of the Illuminati and all these things.
I would say people don't understand what Freemasonry really is, and if you want to understand what it really is, you should go back to my podcasts on that subject matter, that mystery tradition teaching, and understand that there's two sides to that as well. See, people engage in very unidimensional, one-sided thinking, and they have a hard time understanding that something that they initially imagine as one thing and working only one certain way could have multiple facets or aspects to it. It's very childish thinking on their part. And people who think just Freemasonry is all evil, or any occult tradition is just all evil, you know, they don't understand. There's multiple facets to it, and they need to study and look into it deeper. It's that old saying, you know, drink deeply, or taste not, or taste not the Pierian spring. You know, the well of knowledge has to be drank from very deeply. You can't take just shallow intakes of it. You know, when you try to take a shallow intake of the waters of wisdom, then you're intoxicated on them. You get drunk on it because you think you know, but you haven't taken in enough information to really know. You know, that's my answer to them. You haven't looked into things deeply enough. You don't understand all the different aspects and facets to it. You have a one-sided view because you believe what you were told about it. Now, I'm not saying there aren't bad aspects to it either. It's more complicated than what you imagine and what you think that's going on within it. You know, just like people think it's all just one group. Oh, it's just the bankers, or it's just the Jews,
exactly,
or it's just the Zionists, or it's just this or that.
They're using
Freemasons.
They're using any front that they want to their advantage.
People don't understand how complex this entire network is. This system of criminals,
there's not one boogeyman. Yeah.
You know, and control freaks and psychopaths. It's a complicated, interconnected network. It's not one thing. It's not one group of people. They come from every background, every walk of life, every institution on the face of the earth, every country, both genders, you know, all geographic regions of the planet, all ostensible religious backgrounds, you know, all income classes. It's not just the rich. You know, I mean, there are people involved in dark occultism and these think tank groups that aren't super rich people. You know, people want to say, oh, it's just all people of a certain income bracket. No, there's good people who are super rich. There's bad people who are super rich. You know, there's bad people. There's people who are involved in the dark occult who are totally poor. You know, I was involved in it. I was never a super rich financial elitist. You know, they use who they can use to get their agenda accomplished. Doesn't matter what background or walk of life you're from.
And there are still people, this is what I've always wanted to do with you, Mark. There are people who don't believe you're a Satanist. And do you mind showing them that certificate that you happen to have?
Yeah, when I was super proud of being appointed a member within LaVey's group, the Church of Satan, years ago, I actually had these framed. I've since taken them out of the frames and just you know, keep them in a folder. And this is the actual appointment from when I was made a priest in the Church of Satan.
And do you
signed by LaVey.
Yep.
And again, yeah, LaVey was a crony. You know, he was one of these low-level people. And again, it won't say Mark Passio because I used an assumed name.
And people are going to call you, oh, that's not your, you know, real
right.
name.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
It says Mark Rokar, which is the name that I chose when I was involved in dark occultism and Satanism. Rokar is, and this is a customized spelling of this name, it is a demon name from an ancient manuscript from the Nag Hammadi library, a book known as the Pistis Sophia, or the Faith Wisdom. And in it, it details a story of Mary Magdalene asking Jesus what hell is and what it's like and what are the components of it, and you know, what does it look like and what's there, and you know, who goes there and how it works. And he described it as this huge dungeon, this multi-layered dungeon where different demons ruled different aspects of the dungeon, and different types of sinners went to different parts of the dungeon to be, you know, be punished for their you know, lives of sin. So you know, immense liars went to one area and received certain kinds of punishment by a particular demon. And then you know, people who did violence to other people, murderers, they went to another area of it. So all these different demons had different animal characteristics and different names. Well, I was born under the sign of Leo. I'm a Leo, so-called king of the zodiac, if you believe in that, in astrology. But I've always had an affinity for the large cat. It's always kind of, you could say, it's been my familiar, if you will. I've also liked snakes. Cats, large cats and snakes have been animals that I feel that I've been comfortable with and have been almost familiar animals to me, especially like the kind of snakes that are depicted in something, for example, like the Gadsden flag or the join or die symbol from Benjamin Franklin. I chose a name of a cat demon from this book, and that is the name that I went with, and it's pronounced Rokar, and I spelled it Rhochar, and that's the name that is on this.
And I'm so sick and tired of the stereotype of Satanists. People automatically assume Satanists is a bunch of, disgruntled teenagers sacrificing cats or animals within the yard, and you have to worship the devil or anything. And since you obviously have more of an understanding of Satanism than I do you mind, just refuting these so-called, quote-unquote
It's an ideological way of living.
Yeah.
It's not a system of worship, and it is not just a system of rituals, although rituals do play into it. It is a way of viewing the world and oneself within the world. It is essentially seeing yourself as God, and therefore that your will is kind of higher than anything else in creation, and if you can impose that will on other people, so be it, regardless of whether you're harming them in the process, regardless of whether what you're doing is actually right. There's no real moral compass within it. It's whatever's good for me is good and right and should be engaged in, and whatever is not good for me is bad, and you should attempt to avoid that. Now, I'm not saying people should try to just do what's bad for them, but this is about pure selfishness. It's about doing what's good for you regardless of whether it even harms someone else or their rights. Taking selfishness to an extreme level and, looking at, almost like looking at kindness as a weakness, compassion as a weakness. It's like just, looking at self-preservation as the only thing that you should really live for. And that will get you a world where everybody is blocking everybody else from their happiness and just trying to just get all that they can and accumulate and just live purely selfishly and hedonistically. Yeah. And that's not what life is about on this planet. And another aspect, so self-preservation is being the highest law regardless of whether it's in keeping with morality or not. Next to that you have moral relativism, which is there's no such thing as an objective standard of right and wrong behavior that exists in nature, and there's no such thing as cosmic moral laws. That we get to make up what's right and wrong. We get to make all that up based on our whims, our preferences, our choices, our likes and dislikes. And then hand in hand with that, it's a belief in social Darwinism. The idea that the most ruthless should ultimately rule, and there should be a ruling class because their genetics got them there, and they're better than other people because of their position in society, and that should be upheld. That system of hierarchical rulership over others should essentially be upheld. And then from there you get more radical ideology of eugenics, which is, since the ruling class's genes got them there, they should have a right to propagate those genes, and anybody that they deem unfit shouldn't be able to propagate their genes. And they not only want to do that physically, but they want to do that epigenetically, which is what I call epi-eugenics. It's propagating the kind of characteristics and traits in society that you want to see propagated by putting mind control techniques into society to get people to breed out certain characteristics and traits. Hence what we're seeing in major cities all over the world today, where women are no longer breeding with any strong men and bringing children into the world that they raise as strong men because they're actually brainwashed to see totally weak men as attractive and breed with them, so a new class of even weaker men are created who will never stand up for their rights and stand up against tyrannical government. This is epi-eugenics, and strong men are being bred out of society as a result of epi-eugenics being put in place. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to call this in my presentation at Free Your Mind for it, epidysgenics. It's not eugenics. You know what? You want to know what we do need? We do need good breeding. We do need you. That would be nice if we had some of that kind of breeding going on. If we had that kind of eugenics going on. That's not the eugenics we're talking about here. We're really talking about dysgenics. The ruling class of the world, that hierarchy wants to breed people who have no characteristics of rebellion, no characteristics of strength, no characteristics of morality, wanting to do the right thing. They want to breed all those characteristics out, and you know what? They're well along their way to doing it. And this is why the mind control specifically targets women, since women ultimately have the last say over where society goes as far as gene propagation is concerned, because they're making a decision about who they're going to breed with or not breed with. The mind control that they have been put under, regardless of what they find as an acceptable mate and not an acceptable mate, is going to be bred down to the next generation. And all you have to do is look around at the world to understand that that kind of mind control has been going on. Hey, surprise! That the women's choices that they have made so far up to this point, that's what's led to the current human condition, folks. The proof is in the pudding, as they say. Just look around and there's your proof.
And what's a sad and most disturbing thing about Satanism, the exact definition you gave of it, is most people are Satanists. And
yes,
they don't even realize they're not. They're too fucking brain dead to even think that.
Those satanic so-called values or ideologies, they run the gamut of just about everyone in society.
Yep.
It's almost the question is almost who isn't thinking satanically in our culture, not who is. That we have an entire culture of Satanists who don't know that they're Satanists. Don't even know what the satanic ideology is, subscribe to it without knowing, don't care that they're Satanists, love it, love how they are, don't think there's a problem with themselves. They think it's normal, natural, and necessary to be like that. I'm going to touch upon this on my Free Your Mind 4 conference, and that runs the gamut through both genders, male and female.
And this is what results in all 99.9% of the childhood trauma out there. You have parents having children for own selfish reasons, societal expectations. You never hear of a parent saying, "Oh, I want to have a child to give sentient being or sentient life to a person or just a."
Or how about I want to have a child to bring another warrior into the world who is going to fight for freedom. I want to bring a person who's a spiritual warrior into the world, who's going to be, I'm going to raise that individual to be a completely moral individual that stands against coercion, violence, and tyranny in our society. Oh, I've never heard somebody say that that's the reason they want to have a child.
They either do it based on societal expectations. Oh, my parents,
my biological clock is ticking. That one. It's just a program. I have to do it because I feel I'm programmed to do this. My genetics have programmed me to just pump out a child.
And all those satanic beliefs end up getting, right onto that child, pretty much. And then they grow up and then they have kids and the messed up cycle continues. And people think, you have these parents, these apologists. They're like, oh, I raised you. I told you right from wrong. It's not your fault that you're the way you are.
You know what? I'll just come right out and say it. These so-called parents don't love their children.
No.
If you don't care about the freedom of future generations, don't give me the absolute bullshit that you love your children, because I'm calling you a bullshit liar to your face if you're a parent out there and you're not concerned with the issues of freedom that are prevalent in our world today. The destruction of human freedom that's so prevalent in our world today. Don't try to give me the nonsense that you love your children, because I'm calling you a liar to your face.
And prevalent in the main line where I live, the yuppie area, you have these parents that display their children like trophies because they never had enough self-love for them growing up. It's basically their pawns, their trophies. and they don't even teach them anything. Oh, you're gonna, go through this indoctrination camp called school, which strips you of your individuality pretty much. We're just gonna feed you crap food your whole entire life. We're gonna put you on a bunch of SRIs, antidepressants, and you're just, we're gonna give you this religion such as Catholicism or Judaism, and just, that's just how you are. Don't question anything.
And there's another thing. All these so-called religionists,
don't even live up to the tenets at all.
I think they think God is the authority in the universe, and yet they're all statist trash and believe in the authority of man. I mean, you talk about an inherent contradiction. Why people who believe in the God of creation would actually simultaneously believe that there can be authority vested in man on earth.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about the absolute lunacy of believing in two masters, And these people would make the claim you can't serve two masters when ideologically and right in their own mind and their own heart, they already serve two masters. They think they're serving the God of creation, and yet they're serving the demonic government, authority vested in man. Mm-hmm. And they would call themselves, people who believe in the God of creation and want to do its will and want to live according to that force's laws, that consciousness's laws. I mean, give me a break. You people are a joke. All you so-called Christians, all you so-called Jews, all you so-called Muslims, you're all a joke.
And it sickens me to the core that in the year 2016, the age of information, the age of technology, that people find it's cute to have a monarchy who thinks they're in direct line with, God, in England, the Pope.
Yeah.
All these so-called kings. Oh, they're just royalty. Yeah.
But there's still countries with kings and queens.
Yeah.
I mean, like you say, you were planning a trip, you were going to Thailand,
yeah.
And if you criticize the king of Thailand, you could be just jailed, without trial.
Pretty much.
Yeah. They have a king there, folks, Oh, apparently we have a king now who could just decree whatever he wants, write it down, and it becomes law, it becomes the will of God. I mean, like, I just can't believe that people actually still think this way and accept this in as late of the hour of the time as we are in, and people still haven't woken up to this nonsense garbage. I mean, what will it take, folks? When you're being hauled away, it's going to be too late. You better get your head together now. Go and watch my natural law seminar. That's my best, recommendation that I can give you to do it quick. If you want to wake up quick, that's a good place to start. But if you want the whole story, go to my podcast, whatonearthishappening.com. Hit the podcast link. Start from number 1, and you better play catch up if you're not already familiar with the material. And there's tons of other resources there, and I've pointed out other researchers and books all over the place. It's a lifetime of learning compacted into a very short amount of time, relatively, compared to how long it took me to do it and how long it's taken others to do it. So if you haven't gotten started, do it now, but you're really going to be playing catch up, and there's not a lot of time left. That's all I have to say.
And before we settle this interview, I just want to give an example on how these so-called monarchs, people in government, don't even care about you. There's this tribe off the coast of Africa. They literally worship Prince Charles. They think he's a god. You know what Prince Charles does? He's not humble. He doesn't, say, oh, I'm not a god, please don't worship him. He, in fact, sent them a very giant portrait of him, and he thought it was funny. Absolute psychopaths. And these people are literally, you have to pay, 36% of our income tax to, the so-called government?
Imagine
and yet these
that.
people are on our side.
I mean, just think about how broken you have to be as an individual to even want power over other people, want to be somehow revered. I'm not looking for anybody to revere me, to fucking, to bow down to me. Slip there, I apologize.
No worries.
I get kind of emotional about something like that because so many people want to be ruled. So many people want a ruler, a master, somebody to tell them what to do. I mean, you have to be so fundamentally broken to want that, or to want to be that for somebody else. I don't want to be anybody's leader. I'm not interested in leading anybody. I'll be an example. That's fine. You know, if I'm setting a good example for someone else, and they're saying, "Hey, you're helping me to understand," wonderful. I'm not your leader. I'm not your guru. I'm not you know, somebody who's your you know, spiritual you know, leader to be looked up to or something like that. I'm human and flawed like everybody else. You know, if I can help set somebody on the right path and point them, you know, toward the right information, toward the truth, so be it. And if I could be an example of courage for somebody to stop having all this fear of what other people think about them, of what's going to happen, of, you know, oh, you know, what lies in the future if we head down this path or that path. If I could be an example and courage, so be it. You know, that's how I aspire to live my life, and hope that other people would try to aspire to live life like that too. Shed the fear. You got to put the fear outside your head, and you got to move forward, and you got to learn the truth and accept it no matter how ugly it is.
And Mark, you mind telling people what your website is, your band is, and just where they should start when they go to your website?
Yeah, sure. My main website is whatonearthishappening.com. That's whatonearthishappening.com. I always recommend to people to go to the podcast section, which is all the audio archives of my radio show throughout the years, and starting it back at number 1. Go back to the last page because they're in reverse chronological order, and go back to number 1 and start in order. Don't skip around. Take them in order at your own pace. And there's supplemental material with a lot of the podcasts. There's images, there's related documents, related videos, etc. Books that you can read, other researchers that you can research, guests that I've had on, etc. So if you do that, you're going to get the maximum from the information I've put out over the years. If you want to try to take it in a very condensed way, the video section is another good place. I recommend the podcast, but the video section has a lot of great material there as well. And my natural law seminars there, they're the first 3 videos in the videos section. I think those are the 3 most important videos I've ever put out, or will ever probably put out, because that's the most critical information to understand, is what natural law is and how it is the real law of attraction that is working in conjunction with our free will choice to provide the consequences of our behaviors to us. These cosmic moral laws act as a huge mirror to reflect back to us what we put out into the universe through our actions. And that's the real law of attraction, and people really desperately need to understand it because it is the most occulted information on the earth. This is what the rulers of the world, the powers that should not be in our world, desperately do not want people understanding. Because once they understand natural law, it's game over for them, and the belief in authority crumbles, and the belief in coercion and violence crumble. The belief in slavery, in the legitimacy of slavery crumbles. And that's what the ruling class doesn't want. So I recommend those videos if you have more limited time to study, but for those who want to really pursue this knowledge and understand it deeply, you know, of course, I'm not the only person you should be researching. You should be taking in a lot of information from an eclectic variety of sources and individuals. But my podcast section may be a good place to start, to weave the tapestry, so to speak, if you will. A lot of people have always contacted me and said, I studied a lot of this information, but you're the one who brought it all together in a tapestry that made sense for me, for what was really going on. And that's where I do feel I've contributed and been able to use my communication and organizational skills to help in that regard. So once again, whatonearthishappening.com. Also, if you like hard music, which I do, I'm a rock fan and a metal guy and a fan of punk rock. I have a new band called The Founders. You could check that out at thefounders.us. We don't have any official recordings yet, just some live performances. You know, not the best audio quality out there, but you'll get the gist of it. We're going to be recording a demo pretty soon and eventually an album. But if you want to check that out, it's old school hardcore punk with a little bit of a modern edge. And once again, the band name is The Founders, and the site is thefounders.us.
Once again, Mark, thanks for coming on, man.
Alex, thanks so much.